So, on February 24th and 25th of 1987, which will be 37 years ago this February, a two-part finale debuted on syndication. This two-part finale was known as the Return of Optimus Prime. And yes, it was part of the Transformers G1 continuity and part of Season 3. But why was it called the Return of Optimus Prime? Well, quite frankly, it's because of the fact that in the 1986 movie the previous year, basically Hasbro decided to basically have the original Season 1 and Season 2 G1 toy line discontinued and taken off the shelves. Thus, the movie served as a way to pretty much, I guess you could say, correlate with that by killing off a lot of popular and mainstream G1 characters from the first two seasons. Mostly from the first season, if you will. But yeah, the first two seasons, like Ironhide, Starscream, Ratchet, Thundercracker, some of the Insecticons, you name it, and mostly Megatron and Optimus Prime. However, the backlash with Optimus Prime's death was that basically, according to everybody that worked on the series and mostly the movie, they had no idea that he was such a pop culture icon, even as early as 1986, and was looked at as a big-time superhero and idol to a lot of kids, pretty much in the same veins as someone like a Superman. So because of that backlash, that they were receiving for making that decision, and the fact that you got reports here and there of kids being upset, kids crying, kids taking their parents out, parents, I should say, taking their kids out of the theaters, after Prime's death. Some even taking them out of the theaters after the first, initial massacre, if you will, of the Autobots, on the shuttle. To the point that there was reports of kids locking themselves in the bathrooms for a week or two, all because of what, was done in the movie. So basically, Hasbro got a lot of, flack for this. They got a lot of flack, from parents and mothers and fathers and so on, writing in and telling them that you basically caused my son or my daughter, my child, a lot of trauma for what you did. So as a result, realizing that, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done that, they decide, okay, we're going to bring him back. Now, the first time they brought him back was Dark Awakening. Now, this was like a couple of episodes in after the 5-part Season 3 premiere, Five Faces of Darkness. And it was here where we pretty much, I guess you could say pretty much got one last, hurrah, or one last acknowledgement of the Season 1 and Season 2 cast. Including some deaths we didn't even know of, if you know what I mean. We pretty much got one last hurrah, but done in the darkest way, thus the title Dark Awakening. But what was weird is Hasbro, I guess they thought, well, we'll give him closure, we'll bring Prime back, we'll bring him back at least for this episode. Because I think maybe somebody came up with the idea of, well, they're going to want to know exactly where the Autobots went, like what did they do with the dead bodies? It's like they couldn't just throw them in a dump or anything. What did they do? I guess someone decided, hey, let's just have them reveal that they built a mausoleum in space. A tomb that will float around with, containing the entombed dead carcasses, of the Autobots, and as well as their servos, if you will, chassis and servos, as Cut put it. Anyway, this is where we get Optimus Prime back. And I guess they figured, well, we can bring him back, but we'll write it to where he's brought back thanks to the Quintessons, the original creators of the Autobots according to Generation 1. And long story short, that pretty much ended with Prime sacrificing himself to basically make up for what the Quintessons were making him do, because they brought him back as basically a robotic zombie, with only a few traces of his personality and memories. And it isn't until, Rodimus gives him the Matrix, and reverts back to Hot Rod, that, pretty much the Matrix helps, Prime remember who he is, and gives him that one last, I guess you could say one last hurrah before sacrificing himself again. However, that didn't work either. Because if they thought the backlash, from the movie was bad, this only, added to it. And I'm pretty sure this is when a lot of the backlash, a lot of the letters, I should say, started to filter in. The phone calls, the lettering, and all that started to filter in to Hasbro and Marvel and Sunbow, that they realized, yeah, we're going to have to bring this guy back. So my thought is this. In between the movie, when it debuted in theaters, and the airing of Dark Awakening, is when they started planning this episode, or this two-parter. I think that's when they started to do it. Because you can kind of tell by the fact that the animation in both parts is different. The first part feels more like what you're used to, right? When it comes to, G1 and its animation. Well, the second part had more of that anime, had more of that very anime Japanese feel to it. Now, I'm not saying they didn't have episodes that were like that later on. They did. Or not later on, but before that, they did. They had episodes that were like that before, but not in this manner. This felt more like, it was full anime. All you'd have to do is replace the English, language with, Japanese language, and there you go. Which I'm sure they did. But anyway, you can just tell by the fact that the animation was done by two different studios. One, one that Toei licensed out and basically made, basically you could tell Toei was behind it, but Toei had two different animation teams. One that was more of a Western style and one that was more anime style to a very pretty much Akira-like extent. Almost. Anyway, that's how we got to the Return of Optimus Prime. In fact, they even had to alter the ending of Dark Awakening. Now, the episode still went as originally first seen, but when it repeated, you had a narrator show up and say, "But is this the end of Optimus Prime? Tune in tomorrow for the exciting episode, The Return of Optimus Prime." And it's like, if you were watching the episodes, even on repeat, back when you were a kid, and you suddenly hear this ending at the end of the first repeat of Dark Awakening, and you're noticing also that, wait a minute, Dark Awakening came on a lot later than usual. Because you might think, because looking back on it, you would realize, chronologically, that the episodes need to, basically go in order. You know that. In syndication or network-wise, they need to go in order. So back then, you would notice, wait a minute, this, Dark Awakening is coming out a lot sooner, or not sooner, but a lot later than the last time. It's coming out a lot later. And then, obviously, when you hear, that narrator come out and say, what they do at the end, that, even as a kid, or even as a preteen, if you will, growing up in the 80s, that's when you pretty much kind of put all the pieces together and be like, oh, now I see why. Or even as an adult growing up, not even thinking about that then, but as an adult growing up, you come to realize oh, now I see why that was done that way. Now I see why they moved said episode a lot later than from its original broadcast. You start getting clued in. But yeah, basically, as a lot of people have talked about when they've reviewed this episode or discussed this episode, in various ways, either regular reviews, podcasts, you name it, they'll always go back to the fact, and again, you could talk, if you do a Q&A, if you're lucky enough to do a Q&A with the people that worked on the show, they'll pretty much tell you the same thing. They'll pretty much tell you the same thing, that, there was a huge backlash over what they did. A very huge backlash, to the point that they had no choice but to bring him back. Even the late David Wise, who was most noted for doing work on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, even he said he was glad that they brought him back, because obviously, I think he knew that, yeah, this is going to be a mistake. Hey, you do this, and lo and behold, he and a lot of other people were right that probably worked closely with those on the series who worked on the movie as well. But yeah, basically the Return of Optimus Prime was made in a fact that I would consider as probably the fastest I think anything probably got created. Because you have to look at it this way. Basically, the movie itself came out in August 8th, 1986. This two-part season 3 finale came out on February 24th and February 25th, 1987. We're not even what? 6 months in. I think that's what it is. We're not even, well, actually we are. We're actually about half a year in. We're like half a year, from removed, if you will. August, September, October is 2, November is 3, December is 4, January 5, February 6. So we're basically, 6 months and I would say 22 days, 23 days in. 6 months, 23 days in, when they released this episode, from when they released the movie. So this is also noted, in my opinion, as one of the fastest two-part episodes or multi-part episodes ever created in response to something. It is. It is the fastest that's ever been created in a response to something, whether it's live action or animation. It's probably the fastest. And why? Because they didn't realize, like I said, the backlash they were going to get for the decision that they made. And they got a lot of backlash, a ton of them. Like I mentioned, you had kids crying and being taken out of the theater by the parents, even before Prime died and mostly afterwards. You had kids locking themselves in the bathrooms or closets, and it was just a mess. A mess that Hasbro had to fix, and thank God Marvel, Sunbow, and the team that worked on the movie and the series realized, yeah, we got to correct this, and did what they did. Now, one thing about the episode, about the two-parter that a lot of people point out is, not only is the animation different between the two parts, obviously, but also the fact that, there seems to be like some kind of miscommunication, like some kind of misconnection, if you will. Because if it's supposed to take place now, because again, like I said, what they did is they moved and rearranged the continuity of season 3 to the point that Dark Awakening, instead of airing, a couple of episodes after the 5-part series season 3 premiere, it was now shuffled. It was now shuffled to be later on, and to be basically the prelude to the Return of Optimus Prime. Which it ended up being. Ended up being the prelude to the Return of Optimus Prime. But one contention that a lot of people look at as miscommunication and misconnection and miscontinuity is the fact that at the end of Dark Awakening, Prime was pretty much a mess. He was getting burned up and everything. Parts were coming off of him. He already had lost an arm and everything. So he was a mess. His eyeball came out, or his optic sensor eyeball, if you will, popped out. He was getting fried. His light had basically gone out and everything for one last time. He was like a complete mess. And all of a sudden he blows up. So what a lot of people looked at is, okay, wait a minute. how is this how is Dark Awakening the prelude to this? And when we see Prime in Return of Optimus Prime Part 1, he's in perfect condition. What's going on here? And again, that's an example of the fact that they were in a rush. They were in a rush to do this, thus the lack of communication. They were in a rush like, oh shoot, we need to make this happen because we're getting complaints out the rear hole. You know, we're getting complaints out the rear hole of what we did, you know. So they were in a rush. They didn't have time to tell the people that were going to put the script together lickety split. You know, hey, Prime is a mess. You might want to put that in. No, they just said, hey, here's a story. Prime's coming back. It's because we're getting backlash. Give us a story, you know, and do it andale pronto. You know, and that's what they did. They basically said, chop, chop, andale, andale. You know, we got to get this done. And that's why that's why there was some kind of disconnection. There was a disconnection, if you will. You know, when it came to the art style and all that. And even especially when you had the humans, Jessica Morgan and Jessica Morgan and I'm assuming her boyfriend, colleague Gregory, that's why all of a sudden it's like, at the end of Dark Awakening, you don't see any other ship there, that's in the same vicinity. You just see Prime ship crashing into the asteroid. But yet here you have them showing up. You don't have, you don't see the other Autobot planes disappearing, going in another direction as this other, plane or this other, spacecraft is showing up. So you could see that there was a bit of a miscommunication. There was a miscommunication, connectivity, miscontinuity of what was going on. But outside of that, this actually turned out to be a very good two-parter. For what they did, in the amount of time that they did it, it was actually pretty good because the way they wrote it, was the fact that even Rodimus got infected by this hate plague, which was brought over to Earth by Jessica Morgan and Gregory, because it covered their ship, and they discovered that spore that they had brought, basically produced hate. So that's another thing too. Some fans will point out, like, wait a minute. So this asteroid they were going to have that Prime crashed into, and that the Quintessons in Dark Awakening, were going to use to destroy the Autobots via explosion, bombs, whatever, actually contained a hate plague in there. Why didn't we get any reference of that in Dark Awakening? You see, again, that's where the miscommunication, misconnectivity, miscontinuity kind of situation comes into play. Because you have all these things that fans are wondering about, going like, huh? What? Huh? And believe me, if you're a kid in 1987, and I was like, what? I was 7 years old, 7.5 years old, going on 8 that year. If you're a 7.5-year-old watching this, yeah, it's going to fly over your head. It's going to fly over your head. But for me, I was one of those kids that grew up on it, that I didn't care. As long as I saw Optimus Prime back, that's all that mattered to me. As long as I saw, as long as I saw him back, as long as I saw a good Transformers cartoon, that's all that mattered to me. But, growing up and looking back on it, you kind of realize, yeah, that, something felt, disconnected. On a lot of these areas. Something felt very, very disconnected, in the presentation, and I don't think anybody would deny that. Not even those that worked on the series would deny that. That there was a disconnect, there was a miscommunication, there was, very, very small continuity, going on, if you know what I mean. So it was one of those situations that, you're like, okay, you're okay. No, hold on. So I almost lost my train of thought there. But you're almost like, okay, this is odd and everything. But as you get older, you realize, obviously they were in a rush, like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, overall, like I said, as far as the two-parter goes, for what we got in such a rush job, I thought was good. I thought it was very good. I thought what they did for such a rush job and everything, they did pretty good. They did pretty good because, like I said, what they did here, the way they set it up is, you had Rodimus get infected, and you're like, oh my God, now what do we do? Now what do we do? Because now even Rodimus is affected by this hate plague and everything. So it's like, what do we do now? It's like, what do we do now, right? So basically, long story short, it's like the last solution is Optimus. And the way Optimus comes into play, as I mentioned, he's rescued by Jessica Morgan and the Gregory guy. But it's apparent that, he and her father, Dr. Morgan, get infected very slowly by the hate plague because while they're researching it and finding out what it's able to do, Jessica's like, hey, you got to get rid of this stuff. This is not good. If this infects people, it'll make, World War II look like a schoolyard brawl, her exact words. And just when it looked like her father would be like, hey, might be, considering it, that's when the Decepticons attack, steal this rare metal that is housed there. It, causes Jessica Morgan to get injured, and Dr. Morgan and Gregory basically get angry at the wrong Transformers for what happened, and thus basically deciding to use the hate plague to turn the robots against each other, which they do. But it basically gets out of control. It basically starts not just affecting the Autobots and the Decepticons, but also the humans, and it even goes as far as to affect the Quintessons. Well, not the Quintessons entirely, but the Shockticons, I guess you could say the minions of the Quintessons, and all that. And it takes Skylynx, who we get introduced to in the third season, to rescue one of the Quintessons in exchange for them to restore Optimus Prime. Because that was the original plan in the first place. Rodimus looked at the fact that the only ones that could restore him are the ones that brought him back to life in Dark Awakening, which are the Quintessons. And you could already tell why Rodimus wanted to bring him back. Obviously. Because just like in Dark Awakening, and as it was pretty much, storyline-wise, which was a good continuity, plot throughout the season 3, Rodimus was not very thrilled at being the leader. He wasn't thrilled at being the chosen one, if you will. And you could definitely tell that fans kind of sympathized with that. Like, yeah, you ain't no Optimus. You ain't no Optimus. It's like you're a good leader and an Autobot with a good servo heart, if you will, but you're not Optimus. You're not Optimus. It's like you're lacking something. So, obviously, you could tell storyline-wise why he wanted to bring Optimus back. Give him back to Matrix, go back to being Hot Rod, end of story. Anyway, you have the Quintessons come in. You have the Quintesson that gets rescued come in, restore Optimus, do what they can, basically do what they've done before, but if not better. And basically part 1 ends with Optimus being resurrected. But then we get into part 2, and this is where you could definitely tell the animation changes to a more very, I would say, almost Akira style like animation from Toei. And then basically that's when things get really interesting as well. Now speaking of the animation, now that I think about it, some would say, well, didn't Hasbro and Sunbow license out, the animation rights to Akram or whatever they were called? Yeah, they did, because, what season 3 is known for sometimes is the animation errors where you see, like a Constructicon fighting alongside the Autobots. So you see Brawn, who was killed in the movie, fighting alongside Huffer, who was killed off screen in the movie. Or you see, Ultra Magnus picking up 2 Constructicons in his hands and putting them together. Yeah, Akram did get animation rights licensed out to them, but I think it went back and forth. Like, who would be more dependable, more dependable, more reasonable, and more like, okay, who can we use to help, really tell this story, of this episode? And I think that's why they went back and forth. But you can definitely tell the animation difference. You can tell that Akram and Toei, to an extent, worked on part 1, but you can tell Toei was fully in charge of part 2. You can definitely see that. And again, what this one is notable about, out and everything, is you had Bumblebee get, rebuilt into Goldbug. Because, in part 1, he, Cup, and Blur, basically trying to protect people. They're trying to fight off an infected, Superion, aka the aerial bots. And what happens is they end up getting blasted to the point that I guess Bumblebee got blasted so badly he had to be rebuilt. And he was rebuilt into Goldbug. So, so there you go. What was interesting, though, too, is Blaster is a part of this, but Blaster was never in part 1. Willie was. So a lot of people have, speculated, a lot of fans have speculated that maybe Willie got rebuilt into another Blaster. That's what some fans are speculating, like, okay, we have 2 Blasters now, and one of them happens to be Willie. That's what I'm assuming that's what some fans would speculate, because when you think about it, it should have been Willie alongside him and not Blaster or Steeljaw, if you know what I mean. Anyway, and again, that's another miscommunication kind of deal there. Anyway, you have Optimus back, you have Jessica Morgan with them, and all that, and they're going to Char, which is the home planet the home base planet of the Decepticons. And basically they go there because, Galvatron, the only uninfected Decepticon at that time, knows how to get to the metal that they need. That they need to, help, to help kind of stop this plague, egg and everything. And the only way they can get it is to get the metal, coat Optimus in it, turn him into a white Optimus Prime, like, what you get with the G1 Ultra Magnus, or what you see, G1 Ultra Magnus, or Ultra Magnus is, depending on, what interpretation G1-wise you see of him. Coat him in the metal so that he'll be uninfected by the plague. He'll be uninfected by the plague, which is kind of interesting because in part 1, Rodimus had to shut down Metroplex because if he got infected, good Lord. But yeah, he shuts him down and he doesn't get infected. Again, communication issues. But anyway, they come up with a solution that if Optimus gets coated with this, he should be able to retrieve the Matrix. Well, they go to Char, they help Galvatron fend off the infected Decepticons and Predacons. Galvatron leads them through basically I would say an obstacle course, maze, full of traps and everything, like Energon leeches and everything, giant spiders, or robotic spiders and stuff. So he leads them to all this treachery terrainery to get to where they have to go. And once they get there, he wants to know, okay, what do you need the metal for? He wants to know. And originally, while they're walking there, they're traveling to that destination, there's one moment in the episode where Galvatron is trying to get Optimus to tell him. It's like, come on, Optimus, tell me, why do you need the metal? Why is it so precious? And Optimus is like, I already told you why. Basically Optimus is like, I already told you and everything. And Galvatron's like, Galvatron's like, well, precious, but you didn't tell me why. It's like Galvatron's like, he's like, yeah, you told me, you told me it was important, but you didn't tell me why it was important. And Optimus's, response after that is like, because I know you too well, Galvatron. That line right there, if you're a Transformers fan, you know why Optimus said that. Because again, Galvatron wants to know, well, okay, why is this so precious? Why do you need it? You know, and Optimus is like, I already told you. And Galvatron's like, you told me it was important, but you didn't tell me why. And Optimus' response of, it's because I know you too well, Galvatron. That right there, for any Transformer fan, basically, you know, is Optimus, you know, pretty much telling the audience, in a way telling Galvatron, it's because he's basically, well, okay, let me get back to, hold on. Sorry, I was getting a little fubbulated there, But anyway, you know, that's Optimus's way of saying, when, you know, he's telling Galvatron, hey, I already told you why, and everything, I gave you an answer, and then Galvatron's like, well, you didn't tell me why, you told me it's important, but not why, and Optimus's response is, because I know you too well. That's Optimus's way of telling the audience, as well as telling Galvatron, that he knows he's Megatron. Yeah. You know, that's Optimus's way of saying, you know, when he says, because I know you too well, Galvatron, all you have to do is just replace Galvatron's name with Megatron, and it'll be like, because I know you too well, Megatron. That's it. And he could have just said that under his breath, too, if they really wanted to make it obvious that he knows, but Galvatron wouldn't hear, you know, and everything. You know, that he, you know, just under his breath, you could say, you could have had Peter Cullen go like, you know, because I know you too well, Megatron. And then that's it. You could have had it done that way. But they decided just to go with him saying, because I know you too well, Galvatron, which again, you know, pretty much, you know, is Optimus' way of telling the audience he knows who he was before. Anyway, they go find the metal. Jessica Morgan accidentally spills the beans as to why they need it when she says, you know, when she finds the metal and says, oh, there's enough here to coat you. This pretty much gets Galvatron to turn on him and all that, you know, and which Jessica realizes, oh crap, I just blew it, you know, and she's able to distract Galvatron enough to where Optimus is able to punch, you know, his laser cannon out, you know, his optic beam or whatever it is, off of his shoulder, and Skylynx grabs it and says, now we're going to put you to work. And then you see Galvatron putting all the metal into Optimus's trailer, but while he's doing this, you see an infected Cyclonus show up. He grabs Jessica, infects her. You know, Galvatron takes notice of this, you know, and everything. You know, hold on. So anyway, like I said, Galvatron takes notice. He, you know, blasts Cyclonus after Cyclonus. Infected says, you know, tells him to join him. And he blasts him and all that. And he starts blasting some more. I guess that other infected Decepticons coming in, or Autobots coming in, not noticing until it's too late that an infected Jessica now infects him. And basically this causes Skylynx and Optimus to escape, leaving Jessica Morgan and Galvatron behind. Leaving Jessica Morgan and Galvatron behind, which we could assume an infected, you know, Jessica Morgan, starts piloting off-screen Cyclonus just to get where they need to get to, or something. Anyway, they get back to Autobots. They get back to Metroplex. They coat Optimus, you know, in the metal. He goes along with Skylynx to find Rodimus, which they do. And Rodimus is shocked and everything. Optimus tries to get through to him to say, hey, we need to do this together, but it doesn't work because even Skylynx notices that I think Rodimus is drawing his gun, you know, his laser gun, and he starts firing at them, or starts firing at Optimus. And basically, that's when we have, and that's basically when we have our pursuit moment, our chase scene, or pursuit scene, if you will, into a factory where, you know, during the pursuit, the altercation, if you will, Rodimus infects Skylynx and everything, and it basically culminates with Optimus and him on a conveyor belt, and Optimus has to basically literally knock him out. You know, he has to knock him out to get the Matrix, to regain the Matrix. And then afterwards, what he does is he puts the Matrix back in him. He travels back in. You have him encounter Alpha Trion, which, I'm looking at that. I'm thinking, when did Alpha Trion, end up in the Matrix? I mean, I understand he's in Vector Sigma, but does that mean he's also in the Matrix? Again, I think there was a miscommunication there. Anyway, Alpha Trion, wonders why Prime has returned. Prime wants to know Prime tells him why he's there, to find a cure. Alpha Trion says he knows none of it, and he also tells him not to travel too far or he may never be able to come back. And Optimus says, if I don't try, there may be nothing to return to. So while he's doing this, you see that the infected Transformers are coming into Metroplex X to get to Optimus, and you have the Quintesson being like, I got to stop them, and he's using every, every opportunity he can, or every defense he has, available to him via Metroplex to kind of buy them time. And he's telling Optimus to please hurry. So Optimus finally does encounter a very ancient Autobot who's nothing more than, data, if you will. He doesn't have like a robot body. He's more like data, like an AI, if you will. And he mentions basically that they've dealt with this before, and that a wise man was able to contain the spores, throw them into the sun, but no one has been able to destroy the spores. No one's had the power to do that, and the only way to do it is with wisdom. So Optimus realizes, then that kind of wakes Optimus up to realize the only wisdom powerful enough that they have a hold of in the possession is the Matrix. So, as soon as the infected Transformers show up, and looks like they're about to give the fatal blow to Optimus, that's when the Matrix glows. Optimus gets back up. The infected Transformers, mostly the Hate Plague, is wondering what's this. And then you have Optimus open the Matrix saying, light our darkest hour. And that's when you hear something you never thought you would hear, in the series. That's when you hear Stan Bush's The Touch. And I can tell you honestly, as a kid, when I first heard that, my ears just perked up. I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Well, I didn't say, oh my God. I was like, I was just excited. I was like, oh boy, kind of deal, just happy to hear that. I was like, oh my gosh, they're playing The Touch. They're playing the movie song. And honestly, it was probably the best, inclusion of any song in a series or movie, not just because of the moment at hand, because it signified to us as kids, as fans, the return of Optimus. That's what it did. It signified to us the return of Optimus Prime. And yeah, they played it, as soon as they unleashed the Matrix, say, light our darkest hour, because it was a dark hour. I wouldn't say it was on the equivalence of a Unicron, but still, it was very dark, in story. But he's able to use the power of the Matrix to cure everybody, everybody around the world that's gotten infected, including Jessica Gregory and her father, which, by the way, Jessica somehow, I guess, gets flown into, and again, this is where you can tell she probably piloted, Cyclonus or something like that to go back to Earth. This is where you could tell that probably was the case, because she and Gregory are in Russia when this happens. Yeah, they're in Russia, when they get cured. Anyway, basically Optimus is able to do it and all that. And then basically you have the doctors, Gregory and Jessica's father, apologizing for what they did and believed about Optimus. You have Galvatron go up to him and shake his hand, saying, there'll be no war today, Optimus Prime. You've earned my respect. You have Optimus showing Hot Rod now. You have Hot Rod, who, when he sees Galvatron go up to Optimus and everything, he asks Cup, does this mean the fighting will continue? And Cup's like, hard to say. But anyway, you have, like I said, you have Galvatron saying there will be no war today. You've earned my respect. Because even right there, that moment right there, Galvatron, Megatron, whatever you want to call him, or however Optimus would look at him, Galvatron and Megatron, even he realizes, yeah, this was not a good thing. And a lot of people have even, believe it or not, suspected that when Optimus cured everybody of the hate plague with the Matrix, he also cured a bit of that insanity that Galvatron had. So basically, it made Galvatron more like Megatron once more. But yeah, basically that moment, a lot of people would say that, a sane Galvatron realized, that what we just dealt with was bad. It was bad. Even worse than what they would do. Anyway, like I said, you have Optimus showing Hot Rod the Matrix, and Hot Rod's like the wisdom of the ages is lost. And not Hot Rod, but Optimus is like, no, it's not lost. We're all a little wiser now. And Hot Rod's, saying, well, it's empty. Optimus is like, it's up to us to fill it again with the wisdom and the knowledge that we accumulate from that point on. And basically, then he says his iconic Autobots Transformer rollout line, and then that's it. That's how the episode ends. And overall, I know I may have pretty much narrated the episode in a way right here. I do apologize for that. But yeah, pretty much, overall, like I said earlier, a decent season finale for basically something that was not originally in the stars, if you will. Something that was not originally planned or in the stars initially for the season. It wasn't. Because their thought was, we're going to do a season 3 and we're going to be done with it. Or we'll do a season 3 and then we'll do maybe a season 4 and be done with it. But what happened is they had to alter plans. They had to alter plans and change plans because of the backlash they got because of what they did to Optimus in the movie. They had to alter plans. And thus, thus when you tune into YouTube on the Hasbro Pulse channel and some various Transformer related channels, you'll see basically the end result of that. And again, like I said, this episode, does have its issues. Mostly it's miscommunication, between, the writers and all that. It's misconnectivity, and mostly it's miscontinuity because of a lot of things that, didn't make sense between Dark Awakening and this two-parter. But again, this two-parter was a response to the backlash that they were getting because of what they did. Now, what's interesting is this did get released on VHS initially by Family Home Entertainment. And as I've talked about before, it got released initially, I think I've talked about this before in a Transformers live stream or something that I did. But anyway, it got released initially by Family Home Entertainment under the title Transformers: The Return of Optimus Prime. And on the back, at the very bottom, as it's giving you a synopsis of what it's about, at the bottom it says, it says basically, enjoy the sequel, get ready to enjoy the sequel to Transformers the movie. That's how they promoted it, at the end of the synopsis on the back of the original, FHE tape, they, promoted it at the bottom there as the sequel, on the bottom, and I think even on the side of it, one of the two, if not both, as the sequel to Transformers the movie. Yeah, basically what they're saying is, yeah, this, because when you really look at it now, that's what they did. They were basically saying, yeah, this last minute, two-parter, which features Optimus's resurrection, which was not in the cards, not initially planned, was pretty much last minute because of the backlash we got because of the stupidity of an idea that we had for the movie, killing off Prime. Yeah, this sequel, not sequel, but this two-parter, it's the sequel to the movie. Yeah, that's what it is. That's how they promoted it initially, that it was the sequel. It was the sequel and nothing else. Nothing else. Now, when it got re-released later on DVD and VHS by Rhino, they didn't say that. They didn't put that in the promotional description on the back or anything like that. But Family Home Entertainment did, and I guarantee you they got. I'm pretty sure, and I guarantee you when FHE did that, they were told specifically by Hasbro, say it's the sequel, because again, it was not originally planned. It wasn't. It was not initially or originally planned to happen. It wasn't. It was because of the backlash it got. So, hopefully, a lot of people that have worked on Transformers afterwards, yeah, they'll kill Optimus Prime, but they've learned that if you're going to kill him, you got to bring him back because you don't want no backlash heading your way. And you've had various mediums of Transformers from the Marvel Comics, Marvel UK, IDW, Dreamwave, I'm pretty sure, Skybound, Skybound, courtesy of Image Comics, I'm sure they're going to do it, but like I said, you've had Marvel UK, IDW, Dreamwave, you've had Transformers Animated, you've had Beast Wars, Beast Machines, and so on and so forth. Even a lot of the animes like Energon, Cybertron, you've had a lot of them. Transformers Prime, you've had a lot of them to where he's been killed off but brought back. And why? Because they've learned their lesson. And that lesson is don't kill a character fans of all ages love. Don't do it. Don't do it whatsoever. I mean, why do you think, what was it, the Transformers, what was it, Revenge of the Fallen, I believe? Was it Revenge of the Fallen or Dark of the Moon? One of them. You had Prime get killed there. And a lot of people that saw the movie before, people like I did, they said most of it was good until that moment. They didn't like it. So yeah, thankfully they did bring him back. They did bring him back. But it's like, you need to learn the lesson of don't you dare kill iconic characters. Don't do it. You think DC would have learned that when they did it to Superman, but obviously they did. Despite the, the news that got, the news coverage that got, but, obviously they did because they already had it in the works to bring him back. They just did it a different way. But overall, this two-parter for a season that served as a season 3 finale, that served as the sequel to the movie, according to the FHE VHS tape. According to that, this two-parter, this mini movie, if you will, for the quick time it was put together, I thought was good. I and I gotta salute Hasbro and Sunbow and Marvel and Toei and Akram, if you will, to being able to put this all together almost at the last second, the last minute, as well as the writing team. You guys, they did a fantastic job. They did. But let me know what your thoughts are. I know this went on a lot longer than it should have, but let me know what your thoughts are. What were your thoughts when you first saw the Return of Optimus Prime? When you first saw that narration ended to Dark Awakening, and when it got rearranged from its earlier airing to a later airing in the repeats? Let me know what your thoughts are there. What were your thoughts when you saw it be released onto VHS and basically promoted as a sequel to the movie? Let me know down below in the comments as well in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video, and until next time, guys, I am out.